You might have seen one of these many TikToks or travel YouTube videos or whatnot where there's information about a mysterious country that acts as the de facto last bit of the USSR.
Country that does not exist.
A separatist region of Moldova which has effectively been independent since 1992.
This narrow strip of land on the edge of Moldova is one of Europe's least known separatist states.
I've heard all sorts of weird information about it, that it's full of Russians, that it's dangerous, lots of stuff that was maybe different or contradictory, and it honestly just piqued my curiosity. So being in Europe, I had no choice but to just check it out for myself. I flew to Chisinau, which was an amazing city in and of itself, but from there I took a day tour by car to Transnistria, an unrecognized breakaway state in Moldova, officially called the Pridnestrovian Moldavian Republic. If you get on any of the super common trip booking sites like Viator or TripAdvisor, you'll see tons of different ways to book a one-day tour of Transnistria, usually taking you to the quote-unquote capital of Tiraspol via Bender, and checking out a few of the common monuments and sites. Obviously, I only took one of these tours, so I can't speak for all of them, but most of them looked about the exact same and they all cost around $100 US. You could absolutely stay in Transnistria for a few nights if this place really interested you, but you will definitely be fine with only a day trip. It was very interesting, but I think you can see what you need to see in just a day. I got picked up from a spot pretty close to my hotel and took a car for about an hour to this border crossing right here. Now, we weren't allowed to take pictures, which is pretty standard for a border crossing, but I really did not want any trouble. I was honestly a little bit scared when I went over. The border crossing was easy enough. We probably waited there for about 10 minutes. To be very honest, for me personally, it was shocking seeing Russian soldiers in person for the first time. They didn't speak to me or pull me aside or really anything, but as an American, it was just something I had literally never seen before. They took our passports just long enough to print out these immigration cards, which you absolutely cannot lose, by the way. These basically act as your visa since they don't actually stamp your passport. We drove a bit past this checkpoint to the first city, Bender, which saw some fighting during the Transnistria conflict. I'm not going to try and explain it here because the information I'd be giving you would just be a rehash of Wikipedia, but the bits I've learned were really interesting. I tried to take advantage of the tour and ask the guides some questions about the matter, such as whether or not they felt they were more Moldovan or Transnistrian, or if they ever thought reunification was possible, and to be honest, I got answers all across the board. On the way, our driver pointed out these signs which encourage Moldova joining the EU, to which he just laughed and called it an absolute fantasy. The first spot we went to was this fortress, a fascinating spot full of history, and it's experienced all sorts of conflicts. Before we went in though, we saw two spots on the outside. First, this beautiful Orthodox church, and second, this museum. Honestly, I don't even know what to call it. It was full of guns and weapons from all sorts of different time periods, from the Russian Empire to the Soviet Union. I thought it was super interesting. I'm not much of an AK guy myself personally, but there were all sorts of really cool variants, which was nice to see. There were costumes and stuff as well, even a little bit dedicated to cult, which was surprising to see in Transnistria of all places, but it was a neat spot. After that, we actually went into the castle. You could pretty much climb all the towers and see bullet holes in the walls and read all sorts of info about when it was used, especially during conflicts with the Turks. Overall, it was a really cool spot. From there, we took a short walk to one of the monuments we had seen earlier while driving into the city. I was told that 6 soldiers actually died here in that very tank during the conflict. And it was here that the guide explained something to me that I actually had no idea of before. It's technically criminalized to use the term Transnistria in the country. The name itself basically refers to the area around the river Dniester. But as of last year, the government actually made it illegal to use that name instead of the full title, which is, of course, the Pridnestrovian Moldavian Republic. Doing so can land you in jail for 15 days or with just a fine. I honestly thought it was BS when they told me, and maybe it would only be a thing reserved for TV broadcasts or something like that, but no, it's technically a real thing. The spot also had 2 other monuments, the Memorial of Commemoration and Sorrow, as well as the Alexander Lebin Monument, and a bit further over, this one, which I believe would translate as the Star of Military Glory. From there, we headed towards a market, but instead of taking a boring walk, we waited for one of these old trolley buses, which were super common in the Soviet Union. That was super fun to be on. We ended up at this market where I exchanged US dollars for the Transnistrian ruble, which is legal tender only in Transnistria. I kept a few of the small notes, but I've also got to take this opportunity to mention something else you might have heard of if you've heard of this place: the composite money. Later on in the trip, I asked the guide to take us to the bank, which is really the only place you can get these things now. In 2014, Transnistria introduced these plastic coins, which, while legal tender, are super unused, but they're a really interesting souvenir. I think the intention was to have different shapes so blind people could use them, but I'm pretty sure blind people can already tell the size difference between metal coins. I don't really get it, but hey, they were cool enough. At this point in the day, we were pretty hungry, but before lunch, we stopped to check out this Soviet-themed cafe, which was awesome, mostly just full of decorations to fit the vibe. The guide recommended I try this drink, which honestly tasted like mouthwash, but not too bad overall. I'll give it a 3.7 out of 10. After that, we had one of my favorite parts of the tour, and certainly the most unique to this specific day trip, where we took a taxi to a Bulgarian village in between Bender and Tiraspol to the actual home of our tour guide, where her mom made a ton of delicious food. We'd been snowed and rained on all day, and I was freezing, so eating warm soup next to a fire was just incredible. From there, we got in another cab, this one taking us all the way to the capital of this unrecognized state, Tiraspol, right up to the steps of the Supreme Council. I'd been pretty excited to see this. It's definitely one of the main sights to see in Transnistria, I suppose. It was something that nearly every tour had in common. Of course, we couldn't go in, but we were able to take pictures of the statue out front, which apparently people will still adorn with flowers on Lenin's birthday. After that, we went across the street to this cluster of monuments, starting with the Monument to the Defenders of the PMR. Our guide explained to us that these statues represent a mother and her two sons, one being an older soldier and one a younger one. In the middle are written names from the early 90s when the conflict in Moldova was in full swing, and on the left were names of soldiers who died fighting the Nazis here in the 40s. The portion on the right, if I understood my guide correctly, is reserved for a future conflict, which was kind of eerie to see. I don't know. There were other monuments here, such as this one, which is a monument to Russian fighters in Afghanistan. To the left of this was a really cool addition to the wall, a monument to the liquidators of Chernobyl. Next to that, there's the Monument of Glory, with many names from many different conflicts, as well as an unknown soldier tomb and an eternal flame. The final bit of this monument was this fascinating T-34 tank, which saw action at the Budapest offensive toward the end of World War II. It's actually a Transnistrian law that when you come up to this thing, you have to salute it. Just Google Soviet Rule 34. Moving forward, we checked out this park, which had a statue of Catherine the Great. Then we moved across the street to Suvorov Square, one of the more modern places in the whole city. The flag display here was really interesting. First off, you'll see this set of flags, with the two official flags of Transnistria. Yes, their actual flag and the Russian flag are both the official flags of this place, flanked by several flags which represent the provinces and major cities of Transnistria. Then off to the side was something even more interesting, a set of flags dedicated to the only nations which officially recognize Transnistria, South Ossetia and Abkhazia. These are two self-declared nations made from stolen Georgian territory, recognized by only a handful of states like Russia. But they're the only ones who recognize Transnistria, and the three of them form an international organization called the Community for Democracy and Rights of Nations. Fairly ironic. This was about the end of our exploration of the city. We got to check out one last building painted with the colors of the Transnistrian flag. Then we also went to a souvenir shop where a nice old woman pinned this flower on my jacket, telling me it's a tradition to keep it on for the month of March and then pin it to a fruit tree. Maybe it's a tracking device or a bug or some sort of communist spy equipment, but I honestly thought it was pretty sweet. From there, that was about the end of the tour, and we made our way back to Chisinau. On the way back, our car's trunk got looked through as we crossed the border, and we had to show those immigration cards from earlier, but there wasn't any major trouble, and we were only there for, 5 minutes. For such a quick experience, this is definitely worth doing. I feel like I learned a lot more about how this quote-unquote country works from actually being there. Seeing the Russian presence effectively shows just how occupied this place is, and talking to people who mostly identified with being Moldovan was pretty interesting. I'm no journalist, but it did satisfy some personal curiosity of mine. If you want to have this micro adventure yourself, I do highly recommend the specific tour I took, which I've linked to in the video's description. On the whole, if you're in Europe, a flight to Chisinau is pretty cheap, and tours like this cost around $100. So if you're interested in this sort of unique history and you have the opportunity to visit, it's definitely doable, and you'll cover what you need to see in about a day. As always, if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them in the comments. That's all for today. Thank you for checking out my fun little project, and please subscribe for more interesting travel destinations. Eventually, as this channel grows, y'all will have the opportunity to watch me get a little more confident and a lot more stupid. So I'll start visiting sketchier places. If you subscribe now, you'll have the opportunity to see it in the future. With that said, I'm out of here, and have an amazing night.